Hey guys, this is Kip Shubert with Warriors on Purpose, and here's our second take tonight, episode 4, Connection Rehab, with a good friend of mine, Christy Hamner. She is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, and she's going to be able to share more with us about that and what she does and who she is here in just a second. And I'm just super excited for tonight's show. And I put out a poll a couple weeks ago in a bunch of social media groups and on my Facebook page and on Instagram. And the question was, in your recovery, who has been the hardest person, or what has been the hardest thing to reconnect or connect with? And almost on every platform or in every group, it's overwhelmingly number one was ourselves. And so I was just really excited to get to this show about connecting with ourselves, self-connection, because I think that's what so many people struggle with. And I think a lot of people, whether they're in recovery or they're not, I really do think so many people struggle with self-worth, with their identity, finding their true self, knowing who they really are, and being able to walk in that purpose that they've been given. Because, when we're in our active addiction, we so often put on a mask and we become who we think other people want us to be. And I know that I really did that a lot because I had no idea who I really was. And so in every relationship that I had as an active alcoholic, my identity and my self-worth was tied into that relationship or that other person. And that is probably one of the biggest things that I learned early on, was a basis and steps to begin to find out who I was and who Kip was and what I was about and my self-worth, and really begin to be okay with who I was at the time and really like who Kip was and where he was going in the future. And so I'm just super excited to have Christy Hamner on tonight to talk about self-connection. And she's going to join us here in just a second, and I'm going to pop her right on and start talking, and she's going to share a little bit about what she does and who she is and those kind of things. And some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight are just why it's so important and vital, why it's a key for us to be able to know who we are, to connect with ourselves, to find our identity, and to find our self-worth. And one of the other things that we're going to talk about is just some practical things and steps that you can take on your own to begin to find out who you are, to begin to connect with yourself. And if you kind of have a good idea of that and a good sense of your identity, how to strengthen that and make that stronger. And then Chrissy's going to share some things that she's used in recovery treatment and other things that has helped people find out who they are and connect with themselves and really love their self again. So if you're just tuning in and you start watching this, do me a favor, and in the comments, please leave your city and your state where you're from. Let us know where you're watching from. Also, if you're watching this on a replay, give us a hashtag replay. If you're watching it live, you can give us a hashtag live. And also, as you're watching, if you have any questions about how to connect with yourself, self-worth, self-identity, how to love yourself, any questions for myself or for Christy, please throw those in the comments. We are going to be answering those, and we'll go ahead and answer those as well on after the live is done. I'll get back on and I'll get those to Christy and myself, and we'll make sure that we get every question that you have answered. So please don't sit back if you have something to ask. Please throw it in the comments and let us know. My wife chimed in. She's with us. My mom here from Tulsa, Oklahoma, she's chimed in and she's with us. And Christy will be on here in just a minute, and we'll get her going and start to really dive into this topic of self-connection and connecting with ourselves. Because again, if you were like me and you're in recovery, connecting with myself was the hardest thing for me to do, because I didn't know how to do that at all in my active addiction and alcoholism. And even today, being 5.5 years sober, and just living a great life, it's still very difficult sometimes for me to let my walls down and really disconnect with with who I am and feel all the feels. I think that's what the saying is now. Feel my emotions and feelings, and then, compartmentalize those and just move on. Brad Schaefer's watching in from St. Michael, Pennsylvania. What's up, Brad? I'm glad you're here. And so again, let me just check and see if still waiting on Christy to jump in. I know she was having a little bit of trouble finding it, but she will be with us in just a second. Again, Christy is a licensed drug and alcohol addiction counselor, and she is going to be sharing with us her expertise and knowledge on how we can connect with ourselves, how we can develop and really foster self-pride and self-worth, and really begin to love who we are. And that's the first step. For me, I always wanted to connect with someone and to have those relationships that were really, really meaningful and would last forever. But until I learned how to love who I was, I just never have the ability to love anybody else. And so again, this was just so key for me in recovery. And I'm just so excited for Christy to get on here and begin to share with us what's going on and with this self-connection stuff. Because I promise you, I've known Christy for some time now, and she is just excellent in this field. She is just amazing at helping people find their self-worth, begin to love who they are, and just really begin to connect with themselves. Let me see here. We can refresh that. And if you guys are, again, if you're watching, just give me a hashtag live and tell me what city and state you're from. I'll give you a shout out on here. And again, if you got any questions for Christy as she's on, be sure and pop them into the comments. Cindy's right here beside me working. I'm watching to make sure we get all those written down and answered and asked. So be sure, if you've got anything that has been on your mind, has been a stronghold or a big roadblock for you in your recovery or in your life about connecting with yourself or relationships of any kind, please throw that in the comments and let us get that answered. Again, we're trying to get her on here as quick as we can. I thank you guys for sticking with me here and chiming in and waiting it out. But this is going to be just an exciting show about how we connect with ourselves. And again, it's just going to be a great hour. So stick it out. I know she's trying to get on here so we can add her. The joys of technology sometimes. Because we even tested this out a couple hours ago and it was fine. So we're just waiting for her to get on here and begin to talk about some of these things. I mean, if you've got questions or you struggle with your identity, you struggle with your self-worth, you struggle with loving who you are, and maybe you don't have an idea of who you are. I mean, if you've got questions, go ahead and write them down and pop them in the comments now before she gets on. And we'll have those ready to go, and we'll throw those to her and let her answer those for you, so you can really get some help. And this hour tonight on Connection Rehab will really just be an impact for you and really help just elevate the direction that your life's going in. Again, we're just still waiting on Christy. My wife is here, Shirley. Casillas, thank you for watching. I'm glad you're with us. My wife's here up beside me, taking in everything, and she's sharing it out, and appreciate that. And Brad Schaefer from all the way up in Pennsylvania land is with us and watching. And again, just so excited to get Christy on here, and I wish I could just reach the phone and pop her on and take care of this technology, but I don't have that power to do that. Can you share that?
I'll try to
share that to her personally and see if she can't get on. Because I've got I hope you're not waiting on me. It says
never.
Let's see, cemetery. I'm talking with her right now, Cindy's.
I have to friend request her.
I'm trying to think if I can share it
Here,
myself. Cindy should be able to share it.
You should be able to share, but I'm trying.
Let's see. Let's see. I don't have that button on mine. See, Brad says the biggest thing that I struggle with today is self-worth, the feeling of not being worth it, and not all the time, but not all the time, but there. And yeah, Brad, I shared earlier that I put this question to a lot of people on different social media platforms recently, and just what person or what thing was really the hardest for them to connect with in their recovery, and almost everybody overwhelmingly said their self. So I know a lot of us struggle with that. A lot of us struggle with who we are. One of the things for me that's really helped me is that I stick to what God says about me and who God says I am. That I am the head and not the tail. That I'm above and not beneath. That I am a conqueror in Christ. And so I stick to that, and I don't let my identity get stuck in what other people say or other people's opinions of me. And I just stay with what He says I am, and that I am worthy, and the price that His Son paid for me. And so, He calls me His Son, and He calls me by name, and so He has a future and a hope for me. So I know that if God thinks I'm worth it, and God stuck by me all this time, then I must be a little bit worth it, because if God says I am, then I gotta be. And before, just to help you with that question, before, in my active addiction, man, it was always tied to the other person. All right, Christy is here, guys. Fantastic. I'm trying to get her on, and how I can't do that. Let's see.
Is it not inviting her?
Bring on. There you go. Chrissy's coming on here. It's adding her, so as soon as she pops on, we'll be good to go, guys. And she's gonna be bringing the power to you. There you are. We finally did it. That's all right.
Even if we do a trial run, we still have technical difficulties, don't we?
Are you ready?
Can you hear me okay? I'm ready.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little. You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, let me move. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, so how about now? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you?
All right, so
okay.
guys, this is Christy Hamner. Yeah, I can hear you. Guys, this is Christy Hamner. She is a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, and I'm going to let her fill you in a little bit here on everything that she's qualified for in her certification and all that. And just kind of, Christy, if you will just share kind of a little bit about who you are and what you do. Again, this is a lady that I've known for some time now, and she is just amazing in the recovery field and doing what she does. So I'm going to let Christy share a little bit about herself and who she is and what she does. So Christy, you take it.
Oh, thank you, Kip. I don't know if at any time you can't hear me, just let me know, and I'll try and move around and stuff if I have to. So, okay. I am a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. So basically what all that means is I can treat anything from addiction to mental health, codependency, couples, whatever. And I've started seeing children. So now I'm in private practice. I worked at Valley Hope, which is a residential treatment facility, for about 11 years. And then I went into private practice, and I've been there for about 2.5 years. So that's where I'm at today.
That is awesome. And I was sharing before you got on just about how I put out a survey or a little poll a couple weeks ago in different social media platforms just about, what was the most difficult person or thing for people to connect with or reconnect with as they got into recovery. And almost overwhelmingly the answer was ourselves or myself. Um, and I know for me, when I was in my active alcoholism, my identity and self-worth and idea of love and all that self-love was always tied up into um, the relationship and the other person and what they thought about me and their validation and all that stuff, because I had no idea who I was. And so I had to learn that. And so I know that was a huge obstacle for me. And so that seems to be that for other people. And so the first question I had for you is just, you know, connect when we connect with ourselves, when we love who we are, or when we can't. Let me start again. When people have a hard time connecting with themselves, loving themselves, knowing their worth, what are some of the problems that may come up, or what are some of the markers of that people may see in their life when they really have that issue?
When they're not able to even love themselves or connect with who they are, what kind of problems are coming up? I would say
Right.
it can vary from the way you feel all the way to your behavior, but there's so many defenses that we all use just to hide who we are. We think that if someone finds out who we are, that they're not going to love us anyway. So you kind of turn into someone else, or you're a chameleon. You kind of adjust to your people around you, um, which essentially you do lose your identity that way. Get into relationships that are toxic and over feeling rejected. It can act out in a lot of ways. Addictions is a big one, because in addictions, people say, "Oh, I feel like I'm myself when I'm drunk or high," and I'm like, "Well, you are that person underneath. You just haven't allowed yourself to let anyone see you." So in recovery, you get to uncover those things that you think are actually a liability, but they are actually an asset. We think that we're broken, but our thinking's all wrong. So do all kinds of things to cover up that stuff. So I don't know if that explains what exactly you were asking, but
Yeah, I was just kind of
are you there?
yeah. And so
Okay.
I kind of think that gives people an answer kind of to if they're seeing those kind of things in their life right now, and those things keep
Mm-hmm.
coming up, or they're experiencing that, then they're probably having an issue with being able to really identify with who they are and find that self-worth and really connect with their self. Um, and this kind of applies to, I think, all walks of life, not just recovery. But
Absolutely.
why do you think it is so vital, so key for us to be able to connect with ourselves, who we are, self-worth, and be able to love ourselves?
Well, it's important for us to be aware of our weaknesses and our assets in order to be able to even know what our purpose is, what our gifts are, and then what our weaknesses are. Because we have to be able to ask for help. I mean, we are wired for connection. I mean, we're born that way. If infants don't have the love that they need and that sense of belonging, even though they get food and shelter, they die. And I think as adults, we're the same way, but we just have so many experiences that keep us scared to even connect with other people. And so then we turn to those other things like overworking, trying to accomplish things, trying to be perfect, which is, you know, is unattainable, really. And trying to put on a show that we're someone that we're not, all those things that we try and do to appear a certain way because we want to belong. And that's what connecting is about, is feeling like you belong. But the beauty of it is that you actually connect more with people, yourself and others, if you are vulnerable. um, Vulnerable, which means that we share our weaknesses with each other. That's more of a bond than anything. Even our positives, I feel like if we can actually be vulnerable with each other and share our weaknesses, that's really the strongest bond you can have. As far as connecting with ourselves, if we don't even know who we are, it's kind of a journey that starts off small, and I think you just build on what you learn. I mean, it's starting to kind of get curious about what your thoughts are. Our thoughts are a big thing that actually affect our feelings and how we feel. And if you can't really even figure out what you're thinking, then it's hard to even figure out what you're feeling. Um, and then our feelings lead to our behaviors. So connecting with yourself is really important because it will actually, that self-defeating behavior where we keep doing the same things over and over and it's not getting us anywhere. We stop that once you can start figuring out, okay, my thought process is not right on this. But sometimes it takes a little help to get there, you know. So
Now, I know for me it took it. I know for me it took a lot of help, and I think one of the things you said was being vulnerable, and
mhm,
I know for me it was very. I always thought I was vulnerable, um, but it wasn't my true self. I put on a mask or a facade that I thought people wanted to see and that I thought people
mhm,
liked, and I was going to be either a party Kip or what I was, whoever I needed to be, um, you know, in whatever
at that
relationship
moment.
at that moment, and so
Mhm,
and I thought that was being vulnerable, but it was all just really a lie. It wasn't reality, and so one of those things, and I still struggle with it being completely vulnerable because I feel like then I don't have any safety net. But
mm,
I will say once I could kind of let the walls down and know
mhm,
that, like you said, those things that seem so scary and such a source of weakness or fear,
mhm.
so often in turn really become just sources of power and strength. And
Absolutely.
and it's just something that now, it's easier for me to be vulnerable and I can be real in my relationships and in knowing who I am, even like with my marriage with Cindy. It's
Mhm.
just I mean, we've known each other for a while, and so I've had other relationships and struggled with that and different things, and it's just so with Cindy though, when the reason that this relationship was able to flourish and be really real was because that my identity and self-worth wasn't tied to what she thought or what she did. I was going to be
Absolutely.
okay. I was going to be okay whether she loved me or not. And I didn't need that relationship or that love initially to function or go on or anything else. And it was one of those things when I first finally was able to really love who Kip was and be happy with where I was going, that I was finally able to be vulnerable and open up to somebody else because I could just take in what she had to give and give that back freely to her without
Mhm.
without any of that manipulation and without any of that validation that I always needed before or anything
Yeah.
like that. So
Isn't it
I
so
think that
freeing to feel that too?
yeah, it really is. And before you jumped on, a guy, Brad Schaefer, a guy from Pennsylvania, is watching, and he shared that he just has a real struggle with connecting with himself and the fear of he has a lack of self worth and being able to find that sometimes. And I was just kind of sharing before how once I learned who I was and what my identity was, and where my worth was, which for me it's in God and what God says about me. And if God says I'm okay and God says I'm worth it, then I must be a little bit okay. And so that's kind of where I started from.
Oh, that's
And the
good.
more
Yeah.
the more I grew spiritually and the closer I got to God in my relationship with Him, the stronger I felt in knowing who I was. And a key for me was knowing what my purpose was, knowing why I was here. I wasn't here
Yeah.
to be something that somebody else wanted me to be.
Right.
I was here to be a difference maker for God, period. And so once I got to that point, really for me,
Mhm.
I started to be able to build. And it doesn't mean that, I go into like this marriage or any other relationships with friends or family and things are just great and easy. Um,
Right.
any, Anything great takes work. And so,
Absolutely.
but now
Well,
it's
and
not about, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. You go ahead and
No,
finish.
you're first.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of freedom that comes with knowing who you are and knowing what your weaknesses are, and because I know, you have to kind of practice acceptance with yourself too. It's like, okay, I know I'm never going to be a morning person. That's something I'm probably never going to be. but I have to do things in my life that make it easier for me to function in the morning. That's, I've always wanted to be a morning person. I'm jealous of the people that are morning people, but that's just one thing that I know that it's a weakness, and I do the best I can to make it easy in the mornings to go, or whatever. Try to, pick up my clothes the night before, just little things like that. But being aware of what your weaknesses are, it's like no one else can really say anything about me as long as I know, but you could turn those things into assets, like stubbornness. Stubbornness is such a liability in your addiction, or even just in your life growing up, but it can be such an asset in your recovery because you can get really stubborn with it. I'm very stubborn with my peace. I won't give it away to just, to anybody. I'm not going to take on a resentment because I know what that does to me. So I get really stubborn with that, and so that can work for you in a lot of ways. So knowing your liabilities and knowing how to turn them around and just accepting who you are is such a huge thing for connecting with, okay, I love myself today. I know I'm not going to be perfect. Doesn't let you off the hook to just do whatever you want and go, okay, I'm not going to be perfect. It just helps us understand that, okay, I'm going to accept that I'm probably always going to be a clumsy person. I'm a clumsy person. That's just who I am, and that's funny, and I can laugh at it, but it doesn't, tear me down. I don't allow that to tear me down. That's okay. So
When you brought up the stuff about a morning person, Cindy's sitting over here raising her hand, so because
she is.
she's not a morning person either. So
Rock on,
and I don't
Cindy. We're the night people. Yeah.
yeah yeah and she rocks that not being a morning person too, I'll tell you. And
Yeah.
I used to never be a morning person. I mean, most times I was hungover, but it's just
Right.
hard to be. But
Yeah.
after, once I got into recovery and got in, I mean, now if I don't get up early and do my thing and get before the day gets started, I feel like I'm wasting the day. So I don't know what sleeping is like anymore. But that's just, I
Yeah.
think that was a necessary thing for me to find out. That's probably who I really was. And so I had to find that. But one thing that stood out to me when you were talking just then, it was so, and I forget this so often, I should kick myself. But when you said acceptance, um, that probably for me was the biggest thing I took away from my recovery experience, or my rehab experience at Valley Hope, was just acceptance. And I always thought I was going to get a tattoo of 417 somehow, since this is the second paragraph of 417 of the big book. And
Yes.
once I really figured out that what other people did and thought and said and how the circumstances and situations were didn't really matter, that it was just how I was, and it mattered how I reacted and what I said. And I just had to accept the fact that, okay, you were a screw up for a long time and you were an alcoholic. And so that's that's what you are right now. So let's get better. And as I got better, just accepting those things about myself that were good and bad, and
Right.
working on the bad parts and letting the good parts just naturally continue to get stronger. And
Right.
that acceptance part was just key, because now, it's just those things that I know that I'm not very good at. I'm sure Cindy can probably tell you those more than I could. But it's just,
My husband too,
the
I'm sure.
the being vulnerable part. And sometimes I can still get really moody, um, and go on
Yes.
these roller coasters and stay even keel. And there's just there. I just know where my faults are. And I don't have a problem today with, if I make a mistake or I'm not doing something very well, I can go to a coworker or someone on the team, or I can go to someone here, my family, or to Cindy, and say, I'm sucking at that. I'm not doing very good. And it's okay. And because
Yeah.
that's just accepting that I'm just having a problem with it. And so, that's kind of for me, I used to go around early in recovery, especially when I got back to Yukon and was teaching school again. It was kind of the running joke was, acceptance is the answer to all your problems today. And anytime a teacher would say, these kids are just driving me nuts, I would just say, acceptance is the answer to all your problems today. And it's like, shut up. And so,
Yeah, you're one of those
but it
annoying
really is,
people.
Yeah, it really is true though. Um, I was talking before you got on that I was hoping that you could kind of share some things, some advice, some tips, whatever, that people could do, now, um, in their own homes or with themselves. Just some advice or tips that people could start to use or implement that could really help them start to either begin or lay a foundation for or strengthen just their self connection and their self worth.
Oh man, I love this question. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Brene Brown. She's an author, researcher. She's really great. She talks. This is what her life work has been: is studying people that are the joyful people versus people who have a great deal of shame. I mean, she just 20 years of this, and she's just a lot of fun to listen to. But she talks about really training ourselves, the joyful people that have, they called it a rich, enriched life. And this is people that have, actually been active in their addiction and came over to recovery and still trying to work towards having that joy and peace. She talks about the biggest thing for me is just staying in the moment, staying in the present moment. Doesn't mean lack of planning. It doesn't mean that, you don't try to be organized and things like that. But staying in the moment was big for me because I was always worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen a year from now, what's going to happen, what did I say over here? And when you start to train your mind to stay in the moment that you're in, you get so much more out of it. I get more out of my sessions with my clients. I get more out of the time with my family. Um, so the connections are actually deepened because you're actually emotionally present during that time. So if there's anything that I would suggest is even if you're just connecting with someone, at the store, there's a lot of things that I try and do to make myself feel like I'm making an effort. And that's, eye contact, please and thank you, just the simple things that some people who are, in their miserable depression and things like that have a hard time doing. But when you're starting to work on yourself, there's some simple things that you can start to do that will actually make a difference in your day. Um, Another thing that I learned that was so good, I went to a conference this last week. Well, it's been a couple weeks ago now, in Seattle. The Gottmans, they're like big in the marriage counseling field, and they have a great program. But this lady that was given the session, she she was actually teaching our class, which with a bunch of therapists in there, and she said, "I want you all to close your eyes, but before you close your eyes, I want you to scan the room for everything that you see in green." So here I am, I'm scanning the room for everything that I see in green. We close our eyes. She goes, "Before you open your eyes, I want you to think about everything that you saw that was in red." And I'm like, how can I do that when I'm focused on this? She said, "Well, you can't remember anything in red, right?" And everyone's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "That's how you wake up every morning when you start your day. If you wake up in the morning focusing on everything in green, which may be the negative, that's what you're going to get back all day long is the negative. If you focus on the things that you can in the morning, the positives, you're going to catch people doing the positive things. Like, with our partners, even, I could sit there and focus on every negative thing that drives us crazy about ourselves. And we could probably go on and on all day because he gets to see the good, bad, and ugly. But if I, catch him doing something great, tell him, at work, try and tell the people, that you're with, "I like it when you help me out that way," or "I like the way you clean the break room," or whatever it may be, something small to something big. It's just verbalizing that appreciation. And it kind of gets they call it negative sentiment override to positive sentiment override. So it kind of gets your mind out of the negative into the positive, which will actually change your feelings about your day. So, and it's hard to do that when you're in depression and things like that. But if you kind of start small, just, okay, what is the one thing that I can say today was, I got up, I showered, today was a good day, or I got up and I went to work even though it was hard, just things like that. And then start reflecting every day, like, okay, I did well on this, but what can I do better tomorrow? Not beating yourself up about things that you're not doing, but actually going, okay, I like how I handled this, but if this came up again, I think I would do something differently. And then that's when I start asking other people, like, how do you deal with these things? Asking for help is so important, and I'm really bad at it. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I'm really bad at asking for help, but I know I need it. And I know that it's really important to use my resources around me. That may just be, my boss or my friends or my husband who knows how everything technically that I don't. um, just using the people around you to help you. So if I would say some of the things that you can do to improve your day, gratitude is what Brene Brown talks about a lot in her book. And actually helping other people. I mean, helping other people is huge. But accepting help is just as huge. That was hard for me too. Accepting help was, I'd be the first one to help somebody out. But when you say, I'm going to do this for you and I need you to accept that because that's my gift too, we get kind of prideful. I get real prideful. I don't like taking help,
Right.
but there's times I'm like, okay, I can't see to drive it now. I need you to drive me there. And that really sucks. But I feel like God throws us those struggles on purpose. I don't know if he throws them. I think they just occur, but I think he likes us to lean on each other and learn how to connect and learn how to ask for help because we aren't made to do this alone. You know, I just don't think we can. And a lot of times when people take their lives and they're in the addiction, it feels like you're so alone. But then, like when people come to say Valley Hope or they come to a meeting, they think, oh my gosh, there's other people like me. And then being vulnerable makes it a little bit easier if you know someone else is having a struggle. So I would say just practicing things every day that turn your thinking around a little bit, shift your perspective on problems. There was another thing that she said at the conference. I don't know if I'm rambling or if I'm making any sense at all, but
Keep,
am I rambling, Kip?
keep going. This is good.
Okay. Stop me if I'm rambling because
No,
I've
keep
got all
going.
these thoughts going through my. There was another thing that she said at the conference that was really good. She had a 4-year-old little boy, and every time he would come home from school, she'd go, "What did you fail at today?" Which I thought was such a bizarre question, um, because our society is so emphasis on succeeding and working more and doing all these things and making money and all of this. And she goes, I want to train my little one to understand that failure is very normal and it's part of the process in learning and refining things that we want to improve on. And it's not a negative thing. It can be a real positive thing because when we fail at something and we don't want to, then we want to learn how not to do that next time. And so she says, I want failure to be something that we talk about all the time where failure doesn't equal shame. Failure equals I'm going to do better and I'm going to work on what I made a mistake on. So I thought that was really huge. But
Yeah, there's some things I'm going to kind of recap some things that you brought up, and
okay.
I'm also you guys that are watching this and catch this. Again, if you'll just chime in a comment as far as like what city and state you're from, let us know where you're watching from. But if you've got a question as you listen to Christy talk, if you've got a question you're struggling with your self-worth or some of the things that she's talking about and connecting with yourself, throw those in the comments. And even if you're watching this on replay, I will make sure that I forward those to Christy and she sees them, and we'll get you answers uh, and really try to enlighten or impact whatever you're searching for. Through your journey and your self connection. But you mentioned mindfulness and being in the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just so great to talk to you and have you on because there's so many things that I think about or I kind of know, but then I forget, and it's just again that was
It's
just so
easy to
key.
forget.
It was so key, learning those things, especially in early recovery, just to be in the moment. And I know for me that the one day at a time thing that is said in the 12 steps or in the rooms of AA and stuff like that is just it took me a full year for me to even understand what that meant because I could
Mm-hmm.
never be mindful or just be in the moment. I was always worried about if I could get my 1 year chip in 90 days. I didn't want 90 days in 90 days. I wanted forever in 90 days. And I thought
We
30
all
days
want
of
that.
treatment, I thought 30 days of treatment was, I would be a rock. I mean, I just was like would kill it and I'd be fine. And it's just, it's just, one of those things where I always was thinking ahead and or trying to figure something out that was going to happen the next day or the next month or whatever. And so being mindful and being in that moment was a process. It's not something that just happens overnight. Um, but once
Absolutely.
but once you get there, that peace, and you talked
Mm,
about not you're stubborn with your peace, and I love that because I am too, and it's just something that once you get there to that place, I mean, you're not willing to give that up for anything, and nothing else is worth
right.
that. And
Yeah.
you can't do anything about yesterday, and you don't need to worry about tomorrow because it may not come anyway. And it's just today and making today the best day that it can be, and being the best that you can be today, and making the most of the moments that you're in. And I think that
Hmm.
was awesome. The positive thinking. I mean, I know for me, one of the things that I really talk about a lot is our thoughts. What we think on, what we speak is what we become. And what we take in sets in our heart. What we ponder on, meditate on, think on, worry about, whatever, it ends up coming out our mouth, and that's what our life. That determines the direction of our life. And I think that was a key. I know for me, I was glad that rehab and recovery kind of got me set on a schedule or a different routine. And so
Hmm.
I was able to begin to do kind of some morning affirmation things, and I started getting into to reading the word and the Bible. But today I have it's called the Warriors Morning Mission, and it's something that I kind of wrote up that I say a lot, and took some things from other places that I like and some verses that are key for me. And that's the first
That's
thing that I do
awesome.
every single morning. I read that first. Um, and there are some goals that Cindy and I've set that are 3-year goals and 1-year goals, and I start off with
Yeah.
those and then go in, and it's just kind of getting you focused on positive. And I mean, you're exactly right. When it was so hard for me to figure out anything good about me because I was always worried about everything that was so bad, and
Right.
everything that wasn't working instead of everything that was. And for so long,
Hmm.
I had a lot that was good. It just I never focused on that. It was always what I was either not going to be able to do or whatever. And the asking for help thing, man, that's still huge for me too. Um,
Me too.
and it's pride. It's just like, okay, now I'm this Warriors on Purpose guy, and I'm doing this. I'm teaching again and coaching, and my family's back together and all this stuff, and it's just like that vulnerability thing. It's just like it's just I don't want to ask, and I think a lot of it is the pride and the fact that I don't want to hear the right answer sometimes, and I know what someone's
Oh
going to say
yeah.
if I ask, and it's just
Yeah.
like I should have known better. And a couple of the other things you said was just the helping other people. I know that when I do that, it's so easy for me to forget about the bills that are due or the way I
Hmm.
feel if I'm not feeling that well, or maybe my issues with a family member, or
Hmm.
if I'm missing Camden, or if me and Cindy had a disagreement, or whatever it is. If I
Hmm.
get into giving to somebody else, that all goes away, and it's just replaced with gratitude and joy, and a sense of purpose. And I also like what you said in the story that you said at the very end was about our failures. And to me, it's just, especially with people getting into recovery early on, it's just whether they relapse or they struggling financially, or to make connections with themselves and to family members and to husbands and wives and children, and maybe employers, and all these things. It's just those failures can seem so overwhelming. But if we'll just
Yeah.
flip the script and we'll just flip our perspective on those failures, they're just opportunities for us to grow, and they're just stepping stones for us to win. And and
Well,
and
when
some of the
we're all on the same playing field. I mean, it's
right,
one day at a time. Doesn't
yeah,
matter, someone else has 20 years, 30 years, it seems intimidating, but we really are doing this thing one day at a time. And so when you start comparing yourself, you're in trouble already.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah. I got a question for you. Lisa Combs has got a question, and she's from
Okay.
right here. She's from right here in Tulsa. She's a former teacher, where she's a teacher now. Um, And she asked, how much should people in recovery focus on others versus their own identity. Sometimes I feel like I think too much about my identity. Where's the balance? So, where's the balance
Oh,
between
that's
thinking
so
about,
good.
if you can address that one?
Sure. That's such a great question because I was thinking about that today when I was thinking about, oh, what are we going to talk about? So we're talking about boundaries here right now. And so, they say do for others, but then they say we got to take care of ourselves, and it gets really confusing. So, first of all, if you're new in recovery, I wouldn't focus a lot on just, going out all the time and working on everybody else. It's really just you doing those things that we ask you to do, um, the the 12th step or helping others or giving it away. That stuff will come, but if it's all you can do to get through the day, that's hard. Now, as it goes on, I'll say guilt and shame are going to drive you sometimes. If we've done things to our family members or we've done, things that we feel bad about, a lot of times that will drive the bus on how much we're going to do for someone else when we get out of here. We feel like we owe it to them. And yes, you owe amends probably, but you got to think about your time management. Time is a big deal for me. Um, and so you think about what overwhelms you in your day. And so I have a couple of rules of things that I do before I say yes or no to something. I think about it for 24 hours. I have a 24-hour rule before I commit to something. Now, I'm not saying where are we going to go to dinner? I'll give you an answer tomorrow. It's, like it's more like, okay, if I'm going to commit myself to go, say, be a president on the PTA or something, I'm going to think about that for a little bit because how much time is that out of my day? Is that going to take away from the things I need to do in recovery? Or can I just donate maybe a day a month versus a couple days a week and stuff like that? Because people get gung-ho, they start to feel good and they want to do everything. So you really have to plan out your day and say, okay, do I really have the time to commit to these things? So thinking about something for 24 hours, talking to your people who are your support people, and hopefully those people will be really objective with you. And then also evaluating your motives. That one was a big one. Like, why am I doing this? Am I wanting to be liked? Is that the only reason that I'm doing certain things for people? Um, or is this something that I would do if no one was paying attention? If I don't ever get recognized, is this something that I need to do? And so, because it's real easy for us to dive in and help other people. But me giving myself permission to say no, and sometimes that's to the people that are closest to you. My daughter, had to set boundaries with her. That one's a hard one with me. But I don't help her when I do things for her that she should be doing for herself. Are these things that we're doing, are they things that people should be taking care of themselves? Are we enabling something that they should be responsible for? And that was another big one. But even just like time is a big deal for me. So like I'm an introvert by nature. Um, so I have to have some alone time every couple of days or I start to shut down. I don't compute anymore, which is weird because people are like, you don't seem like an introvert, but I know that about myself. And so I have to say, no, I'm not going to do this 3 days in a row because I know what it's going to be like. I'm going to be agitated. I'm going to be cranky. You know, those are the things that start to happen if I feel like I can't have that alone time, breathe, you know, listen to my music and do what I need to do to just kind of revamp myself. So if you know yourself well enough to know that it's really building things into your schedule, and whether that be service work or whatever, but not overextending yourself. I don't know if any of those answers help, but boundaries are major. I mean, and sometimes you still feel guilty when you say no, but you know that answer when you say, yeah, I'll do that. And then right afterwards, you're automatically like, oh my gosh, I'm going to
Yeah,
be dreading this. This is going to be all day
right.
ordeal and I'm not going to have any energy for anybody else. That's when your gut's telling you, nope, you got to scale back. Like that's not going to work for you. So does that make
That's
sense?
that's really good. Oh yeah, because it's um, Lisa said, yeah, that's good because she said that it's really hard with her family members, um, and especially when she's always trying to make amends to her kids. And
Oh,
so and I'm sure there's so much guilt probably she feels. It just I know how that is. I know how that is with my kid. And I want to give a shout out real quick. Bradley Bagwell is chiming in. Thanks, Bradley, for joining in with us. But I those two things that you mentioned with the 24-hour rule and finding your support, I think are huge. And because I think so many people struggle with that people pleasing and
oh
always
yeah.
wanting to say yes. And how do you find that balance? And I know for me, um, I will throw everything I have into whatever I'm doing, and I don't know if it's that I'm an empath. I don't know, you know, really what that is with me sometimes, but I feel everybody else's feelings and emotions, and I'm
Mhm.
learning as I go to be able to be there for those people and help guide them or instruct them or coach them or teach them or whatever role that I'm playing in their life, but not to take it home with me and not to take it on myself.
Right.
Because I know with
Oh,
me, it's just I can get wiped out where
yeah.
and Cindy will tell you where I want to go into a cave or to a cabin in the
Mhm.
mountains. That's what I always say. I want to go to a cabin in the mountains and with nobody else and be by myself, and I don't care if I see anybody for forever. I'm good because I will just get so you know worn out with feeling like
Flatline
I'm
is what I
always
call
saying.
it.
I always feel like I have to say yes and continue to do more and give everything
Mhm.
into what I'm doing. And so there is that balance. And so that's really good that you said that. 'Cause there's times where I will say, "Oh yeah, I'll do that," and I'm like, "Crap, why did I? I'm so
Mhm.
busy already." But I think another thing you were talking about were motives in what we
Mhm.
do, and I think that is so. And I know back in my active alcoholism, I can look back now because I didn't have a clue then. Really, I mean, I knew, but I didn't know. Um, my motives behind things were always not pure. I wasn't just doing it out of the goodness of my heart and because I loved somebody or I wanted to connect with them. I was doing it because I needed something in return. There was always a
Yeah.
payoff for me. And if I didn't get it, then I was upset, frustrated, depressed, whatever, and would just drink more. And so,
Mhm.
you know, now it's just one of those things where that still is I think, and this can apply for people who aren't in recovery and just in their life. Um,
Mhm.
Really being able to step back sometimes and check our motives to see, you know, if what we're doing is is for the right reasons. Are we doing it with integrity and character? Are we doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do? Or are we doing it because we are trying to pat our own back or
Mhm.
achieve some glory? And I had to take some a dose of humility this second season coaching because that first season was so amazing, and I did it the right way and my motives were pure. But this second season became more about what I could accomplish and what I could do because we are supposed to be better and all this stuff, and I lost focus and sight of what my job was and what I was there for, and was focused more on, okay, if the team just wins more games, then they're going to say, hey, look at Kip, look what he's done, and so
Right.
my
I've been
motives
there.
became a little bit impure, and pride comes
Mhm.
before the fall, and God
Mhm.
always has a way of kind of bringing you back on track and humbling you, and so
Yeah.
it's just it's a process, and I'm
It's
trying to
a
make
it's a
sure.
recentering every day too, because there's days, I'm like, man, those sessions were great, and then you start thinking, I did so good, and I'm like, oh no, that didn't really have anything to do with me. It's because this morning I prayed and I asked God before every session, help me do this, help me be in the moment, help me say what I need to say, and the sessions went good. And I can't fool myself at the end of the day going, I did that, because that really wasn't about me. It
Right.
was about me stepping out of the way and letting the process go. And so we want to take credit because we just, we want to feel good about it. And it's like, no, the only reason that I accomplished this is because I know, the only reason I got through college is because I know that I had help and I had him behind me. And, the only reason I got through those tough times with being a single mom is because he was there. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I can't really take credit for because I look back and go, I don't know how I would have do that. So that's proof that he was
Yeah.
working, at that time.
That's just, I think
So,
that's something we can always go back and check. I mean, I know, like I said, when I moved to Sapulpa to go back into coaching again, I knew it was an open door, but for the first time in my life, I was going into it because that was my purpose. That's where I was supposed to be. That's where I was planted, and so just go work and be the hands and feet of Jesus, and just do what I'm supposed to do. Be obedient, and just be the best
yeah.
I can each day, and impact and help people. And then the second year, I mean, it was such an amazing first year, and the boys exceeded, so far above anything anybody thought. And I knew where that source was, and the boys knew where that was. I shared it with them all the time. And it was one thing that, in the classroom, I can't really share a lot about my past. In the locker room, I can.
Hmm.
And it's effective because it relates a lot to athletics. And, um,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
that second year I came into it with a little bit different attitude. It was like, okay, look at me, look what I did.
Yeah.
And I forgot that I had nothing to do with that turnaround of that program. It was just God used me at the right time, and that was all God. And so, it was one of those things
You
where,
were willing. I mean, you have to be willing and then it'll happen. But, you are a willing participant. You're using your gifts, what they're for, but you still giving him the credit because it wouldn't happen. So yeah, you
and
have to have some part in
and
it or it wouldn't
the
happen. But
the thing I like now is kind of what you were talking about, is being able to know your strengths and weaknesses and those things. Before,
hmm
I could have had a good year coaching and I had a lot of good years. But if the next year would have went bad, it would have not been my fault at all. It would have been because my players didn't do what I told them. It would be because the players didn't
oh
work hard
yeah,
enough.
yeah,
It would have been because the parents didn't do their part. It would have been because the school didn't something. It wouldn't have been me.
yeah,
And
right.
now I can look back on it and say, you worked hard and you did you did your job, but your motives and your focus were all jacked. And so, and that's one of the good things about knowing who you are, and
Yes.
being able to connect with yourself, that now I don't go back into a bottle or drugs or whatever else, because I get so frustrated and depressed, or resentful at other people because I'm not getting the credit or whatever it may be. It's just,
hmm
I can say, okay, I didn't do that good of a job. Now I know where I need to correct it, and I can go forward.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I think I don't if and I'm going to continue watching. Jessica Russell's here. Thank you for being here. Michelle Martinez. Jessica, thanks for sharing. Um, my mom says Tiffany's from Pueblo, Colorado. Hi, Mom. Um, um, but and I had my head before I started talking. I get going too fast. What was I going to say? Um, Dang it. Now I'm just.
Sorry, there's a
It
lag on my
happens to
end.
you too. I lose my thoughts all the
Yeah.
time.
I'm like, Cindy, what was I saying? She's like, there's a lag on my end. I don't know. Um, no, I was just that balance, or the self love thing, and this and being able to connect with ourselves. Sometimes I think or from what I see in the world today, it's really popular, the self love, and
hmm
loving yourself and putting yourself first, and you're the most important thing. And Lisa brought that up about having a balance. Um, but I think people I think they misinterpret, or they get confused about self love and self connection. I mean, knowing your self worth.
Mm, yeah.
Because it's not all feel good, touchy feely. Let me take a
No.
bubble bath with candles all around and get a mani pedi. That's
Well,
not what we're
that's part of
talking.
self-care, but yeah,
It's yeah,
that's not all
self
of it.
care, and being able to find your identity, and know your worth are different. And I think sometimes people
hmm
get confused. Um, do you have anything you could share, maybe, that can kind of explain the difference better than what I can, obviously?
Well, I think one of the things that helps me a lot in learning, about myself and who I am, and just connecting with it, is really just getting curious about feelings and why you feel the way you do about things that happen, even current situations. I'll share just a little bit about just a little awakening I had the other day. And um, in my history, in my childhood, I really wasn't. I didn't, with all the things that went on, I was never a child. I was always kind of like a little adult my whole life. I mean, and I always like kind of an overachiever, always had to keep peace with everybody, what didn't like conflict, all of that. And so as I've gotten older, it's been crazy, because I think one of the things in recovery and just really connecting with yourself is learning how to play, have fun in what you're doing. And so the other day, which my husband's up there, he'll probably hear me share it, but we were watching a movie. Honey, what was the name of that movie? The Mary Poppins Walt Disney movie? Oh, Saving Mr. Banks. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but anyway, it is like the true story where Walt Disney meets the writer of Mary Poppins. And anyway, I was bawling at the end of it, and I'm like, why am I so upset? Like, why am I so upset about it? So I started getting curious about it, and I really dug and dug into some really hard stuff at that point. And I was talking to my husband, and I said, you know what I think it is when I was young, the only way that I felt like I could be a kid was when I went into the world of Disney, because I've always been a big Disney fan, even though I felt, like a little person that was taking care of everybody else. And my husband, he proposed to me at Disneyland. So that was like a big thing. And I cried when I met Mickey, and I couldn't understand why I was so emotional. And it all made sense the other day when I watched that movie, because Walt Disney talks about his bad childhood in that movie. And he talks about why he was successful in helping children do what they do. Because Mary Poppins actually had a horrible, the story of Mary Poppins, anyway, it was a horrible childhood. So she was using imagination, and it was her story. But anyway, that's off the topic. But the reason I'm saying that is because I feel like when you can connect with yourself and how your experiences still affect you today, it's such a huge eye opener into how you conduct yourself in relationships, how you react to certain things that may bring you anxiety and you just don't even know why. So if you start diving into that to me is a huge connection with yourself as to why I feel, there's times that I feel like a little kid when someone raises an eyebrow at me, or I feel like I'm a disappointment in something, or I didn't do well on something. And if I so much as get an eyebrow, for some reason, I go back to when I'm, 11, 12 years old. And I don't know why I do that, but now I know what it is. I can go, okay, that's just that little glimpse of, my little childhood, and I can let that go. And it's not that anyone did anything. It's just I felt like I needed to be, everybody's people pleaser and do everything I was supposed to do. So I think just getting curious about why you react the way you do and trying to get to the bottom of it. Because now that some of that stuff's resolved, I know what it is when it comes back up. And I don't really dwell on it, and I don't have to be in a funk for a day or two about it. So
I'm
does that
glad you
make
said
sense?
that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, because if for me, in being able to, in recovery, and being able to learn how to connect with me and figure out who Kip is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I always thought that it would be, all the I love me, the Barney song, we love each other, and blah blah blah, and but it has so much more to do, kind of with what you just really, explained, is that now I can look at my life and the things I do, and once I just started to discover who I was and how I worked, and being able to connect with that, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and
Yeah.
not just want the good always in the spotlight, and able to go back into, things in my childhood and things with my parents and my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and then in my past relationships, even with my ex-wife, being able to get to a point where the relationship was what it was, and accepting how it was, and looking at my part in it, instead of always
Yeah.
blaming her for everything that went wrong. what did you do, and why did you do that? Because once we get to, if we don't ever uncover the root of the problem, it's just like a plant. If you don't dig out the
Mm-hmm.
root, it's just going to regrow. And
Yeah,
so once you get to the root of why you're doing it, then you become aware of it a lot more easy, and you can start to begin to change it and fix it and do different things. And
absolutely.
I think that is really really cool. I'm gonna real quick. I'm gonna recap some of the things you said, that people can do on their own and start to kind of dive into and practice to kind of to help them find self connection and connect with themselves. And that was just mindfulness, being in the moment. Um, that one day at a time thing, and just not worrying about the future, don't worry about the past, just be in that moment and be present in what's going on, and that acceptance part of just, you know, it is the answer to all your problems today. I mean, your situations and circumstances are what they are, and the people around you and what they do is not in your control. So just do you, and do the best that you can do that day. Um, Positive thoughts, and the affirmation thing, and being able to get up and say, the first thing I say when I get up in the morning is, something great is going to happen to me today, and something great is going to happen through me today. That's the very first one
Very
that I
good.
speak.
Yeah,
And it's just, when you do that, your day just turns, to those thoughts, because what you think and what you speak is what you become. And
absolutely.
being able to help people get out of your own head, and being able to ask for help, surrounding yourself with
Yeah.
people that you feel safe and you can trust, but that know what they're doing and can give you the right answer and the right guidance. It's easy for it used to be easy for me to be around other alcoholics, because I knew that if I
Yeah.
said I don't really want to go drink today, then they would be like, "Oh, come on!" So I knew they would get me. I would get what I wanted anyway, by
Right.
using them. And so you just, getting really sound people around you, and that last thing, when we were talking earlier, just about the failure part, especially when you're in early recovery, when you, instead of being so, getting depressed or being in guilt or shame over a failure or even a relapse for that matter, um,
Hmm.
to flip the script, and change your perspective on the way you look at those things. It's just an
Hmm.
opportunity to grow. It's just a chance for you to learn how not to do it, um, and
Right.
then to do it the right way, and gives you another chance to do that. I want to share something real quick, because I know we're getting long here in time. Um, One of the things, and I don't, you may be able to shed some light on this with your experience and expertise. But when I went into rehab, one of my huge struggles was not knowing who I was and having zero self worth and esteem, and I mean, I just didn't know how to connect with anybody in a real vulnerable, you know, the right way. It was all wrong. And in rehab, I was given this huge stuffed animal. It was a dog, and I was to carry it around for, I think it was a week, and I had to take it with me everywhere I went, and that dog was me. And I would get irritated because people would take it and put it in the bathroom, or if I left it unattended, or all those things. And I had some affirmations that I had to say, to that dog at night and to me in the mirror, and it really worked. And I'm just curious if you can, with your expertise, let me know. But at the end of that week, for somehow, I felt like I was okay, and that I could make it, and that I could do it, and that I was worth it. All because of that dog. And so I just kind of wanted, if you could, I don't know if you've practiced that or if you used that in your practice or what, but how does that work? I mean, what do you guys
It
do? What is the magic behind that when you do that?
is like magic, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's crazy because you
it
think,
is.
oh, this is so simple. But there's something about when you have something physical to kind of reinforce that thinking, and you have to say things out loud. It's like what you say and what you do will reinforce the thought that we're trying to have. So, we a lot of time when I worked at Valley, we would have you, have the patient group do affirmations out loud, and they would go, I don't believe this. I'm like, okay, but you need to say this over and over and over, because that's what you don't believe it right now, but this is what we see. So does that mean that what I see is not valid? Until they start believing it themselves, because it really is in there. It's just there's all that junk that keeps you from seeing who you are, the good core of a person, because people aren't there because they're bad. They're there because they're sick and they need help, and they've made some choices that weren't good, just like everybody else. But we worked hard on doing little assignments like that, and they would go, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work. Well, just do it. Just trust me. Just try it. But it's the same thing. Like, I don't think they do the hot seats anymore, but the hot seats was a big deal because, we would have the patient, read off their liabilities according to the rest of the group. They would write them out, and then they would read them out loud. And then the assets were usually the last part. And, the liabilities, most people were ready for. They've heard that, struggled with this and struggled with that. People kind of know what they struggle with, but when you give them the good stuff, it still blows my mind how people struggle to internalize the positive. I still do sometimes, but it's like, you could just see people get really emotional with it. So we would do some physical assignments, like carrying the stuffed dog, or carrying around a doll so you could nurture your child. Or it would be king or queen for a day. Maybe this person did a lot for everybody else, and it was their turn to accept, affirmations, or even just going up in front of the group during patient hour and saying a shout out, which sometimes would startle me, but shout out like, I am forgiven, and I am a giving person. And then the crowd would say, what? And then you reinforce it again. And they would say that for a week. And it was like, you could see the changes just in people's appearance after that, doing those things. It was like, I mean, I can't even explain the miracles that I got to see there, and how people change just from positive reinforcement. And then eventually, over time, you start to believe the things that you tell yourself. So, that's why we, even now in my private practice, I'll have them do affirmations in the mirror, or write things, or even to see it visually in their car, in their mirror, wherever they can, to remind that, yeah, I am these things. So we forget the good stuff so easily.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's really good, and I just know that I mean, reflecting back on that time, you know, that was my first, that I had that I did the stuffed animal thing, early on in rehab, and I just remember when I got through with that week, and I didn't want to give the dog back. I mean, I didn't want to take it to begin with, but at the end of that week, I didn't want to give it back, and it's because it was just like, I finally had learned for just a week anyway that I was okay, and that if I would just take care of that and just focus on the good, and somehow just doing that brought that out of me. I think it, like what you said, it attached something physical, to that, and I've learned in the last 5.5 years that, again, what we think on and what we speak really determines and affects the direction that our life goes. And,
Mhm.
it's just one of those things where, you know, if all you're going to talk about are your limitations, then you're going to stay limited. I mean, there's no way around.
Mhm.
You're never going to blow the ceiling off. And so if we talk about why we can't get sober, or why we can't get, um, well, or why we can't find a real connection, why we can't, make a marriage work, or why we can't connect with our children, or why we can't be a good employee, or whatever that we do. If that's all we talk about, then that's what's going to happen. We're never going to
Right.
do that. And so
And
it's
so
just,
flip it around and go, how can we?
and
Give
I
me some
think that's it.
ideas of how we can, Yeah.
And there's something about that. For me, it was just being, you know, without, again, I hate being vulnerable. Without getting emotional, it's just, I had to be completely broke.
Okay.
I had to be completely broken for me to get it. Because even coming into rehab, I still didn't think I had an issue. I knew there was some. I mean, I did lost my home and I lost my car and I kept my job and then I lost my kid and I mean, I was losing everything, but that was everybody else's fault, not mine. And it's just once I got to that point where, okay, Kip, something's really bad and you can't fix this. You've got to surrender. And once I got to that point and realized that, okay, you got to give it up and you got to get better and you got to fight. And then realizing with that stuffed animal thing and that I was worth it and I could do it. And then just beginning to take those steps on a daily basis and start to learn all those things that were thrown at us. Again, I wanted to learn it all before I left, and I'm still learning to this day. And I think we all, no
Me
matter whether
too.
we're, no matter whether we're ever been an addict or an alcoholic or not, I think that we're all just learning and progressing. And
Absolutely.
before we get off, and now Johnny Treats on. Johnny, thanks for
Hi,
for being on.
Johnny.
Ricky, thanks for
Oh,
being on. Um, uh, what is and since this show has been about self connection, if there was one thing that you could tell somebody that would help them be able to connect with themselves, what would that be?
hmm. That's a really good question.
I mean,
Just like the one thing that would help them connect with who they are.
yeah, like what would
I
be the
think
most important thing you would think?
I would say try and look at yourself through either your child's eyes or your parents' eyes. Because sometimes I think that we can actually get a better glimpse of connecting with ourselves if we can, because we think we're, if once you do things that make you feel shameful or things that we feel are bad, we think we're a bad person. That's what shame is I'm bad. Guilt is I did something that I felt was bad, but that went against my moral compass. So I think if you had to connect with that part of you that you think, is lost or is not there anymore, I think just what would you say to your kid, right now? Or what would you say, what do you think your mom would say to you or your dad, someone that loved you? How do you look through their eyes? Because a lot of times when people are talking about they just can't love themselves and they don't know who they are and things like that. And I'm like, okay, so the things that you're talking about yourself, can you explain to me what your kids like or what your son's like? Well, yeah, they're this. Okay, so it's so clear when you can see somebody else that you love, but when it's you, what's the block? So I think just trying to remind them that that good stuff that's there is them. um I don't know if that makes any sense, but
It
that's a
does.
really hard question, Kip. That is a
It
really
makes a
hard
lot of sense.
question. I'll probably
Well,
get the
good.
answer to it
Hey, well,
2 hours later.
you, hey, then come
Huh?
back on and throw in the comments for people. You can come back
If
on and
I
throw it
if
in the
it
comments for people. I remember I
okay.
remember when I was in rehab and you talk about there's a lady, Donna Wendell, said talk to the person in the mirror, and you were talking about um, you know that, and uh, it was one of the exercises that with a counselor there, and he had this mirror, and he brought this
Yeah.
mirror out, and I was just like, I had no idea what was going to happen, and I could have, after that hour was over, I could have punched him in the face, I think, um, but
Everybody hates the mirror.
that was probably one of the, it's like, okay, pretend your daughter is, or what would you say to yourself when you were a kid, and
Yes.
now you're looking at your daughter and she has 5 minutes to live. What would you say? And I was just like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, you know.
Wow.
especially
Yeah.
in my situation that I had going on in rehab with losing Cam and not being able to see her and stuff. And so that was just a killer for me. But I also think that made me be completely vulnerable and realize
Yes.
that the fight that I had the fight that I had to do, and the fight that was in me, and the fight that was in front of me. And so, once I look back on that experience, I didn't like it when I went through it. But again, we have to get out of our comfort zone and get out of our box, and we've got to be pushed. And when we grow, things aren't pleasant, and it's
Right.
going to hurt a little bit. And that was probably one of the things that where I grew the most in that first 30 days was just completely opening up my soul. That just ripped it open. And so, in doing that, I was able to see, okay, I was able to see how broken I was, but I was also able to see all the good things that were in there too. And so it was worth
Yeah.
fighting for, and it was worth bringing back out. And so, I think
Right.
that's a good one, looking through the eyes of your child or your parents, or
Hmm.
and there's just so many things that when we are able to connect with who we are and be honest with ourselves about who we are, um, we can make, like I said, people talk about self-care and self-love and loving yourself and putting yourself first and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it's putting myself last. There's a balance there, yes, and taking
Right.
care of myself and things like that. But, when I learned, and I'm still learning, but when I learned to really connect with Kip and who he is and what he has to offer, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to work on the bad and to strengthen the good, and I was able to connect with other people, my kids, my mom and dad, siblings, a wife, friends and family and coworkers now, and players and all kinds of things. But I was able to make a difference and be an impact and be an influencer and be a positive person in those people's lives
Mhm.
because I could connect with myself. Before,
Yes.
all I wanted to do was be the best me and help people and all this stuff, but I had no idea who I was. And so if I tried to help somebody or even coach or teach or whatever, I would just, everything I was in that group of people or in that person. And if it didn't go well, then obviously I failed. And was
Oh,
that was the biggest lie that I believed for so long. Um,
yeah.
and so it's just really, self connection is so key. And I know so many people struggle with it. Um, and if you guys are listening to this, um, and I'll type up some notes for you that Chrissy's mentioned here and send to you if you want to message me online. And Chrissy, this has just been an
Oh,
amazing hour with you.
it
And I just
has.
once
It's been
again,
awesome.
I just want to thank you for sharing everything you did about being able to connect with ourselves, being mindful, being in that moment, asking for help, positive thoughts, because I think this is really going to help somebody out there and that
I hope
watches it.
so.
And if you guys are watching this, if you need anything at all, ask for help. Send me a message. Send Christy a message. Send anybody else that's commenting in here a message. We're all in this together. We're all on the
Yes.
same team. So, Christy, again, I just want to thank you for being here
Oh, thank
and for
you for
sharing
having me.
sharing the
I
time
love
with
what you're
me. And
doing.
well,
You're doing so much good stuff.
we're
Yeah.
getting better as we go. And so just trying to make an impact and just really trying to keep our motives. We talked about that. Keep my
Yeah.
motives pure and just be an impact and a difference maker and use what I've been through to help other people maybe not have to go through the same kind of things or hit the bottoms that I hit. So again, I thank you for being here.
You're
I'm gonna ask you to go
welcome.
ahead and
It's my
sign off because
pleasure.
I got one more
Okay.
surprise for
You
everybody.
do?
Yeah. So if you could sign off
Okay.
for me, I gotta.
Okay.
I,
All right. I'll
thanks
talk
for
to you
being here.
later.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Christy.
having me. All right. Bye.
Absolutely. Still, if you're still on, um, thank you for watching tonight, for listening to us talk about self connection. That was again Christy Hammer. I just wanted to share before I sign off here. we couldn't talk about my specific story and relationship with Christy due to confidentiality laws and agreements with what she does and the rehab facility that she used to work for that I went through. But Christy was my counselor, and I'm going to get a little emotional, but she was just amazing for me. And she was an angel when I needed one. She helped me through a really rough time, and really helped me to see. She was the person that helped me to see my identity and who I was and understand my self-worth and really begin to help me to love myself. And when I was sharing with her about that stuffed dog story, Christy was the one who assigned me that stuffed dog. And I had to carry that stupid thing around for a week, but it just worked magic. And me having something physical to attach the affirmations and the positive thoughts that I was finding out about myself and saying to myself as I was going through early rehab. And again, Christy was just amazing. When she was working there at Valley Hope, she helped save my life as I went through it. She was my alcohol and drug counselor there at Valley Hope, and I've known her for 5.5 years, and she's become a good friend. And those of you that have stayed with me and are watching this, or maybe you've caught the final end, I encourage you to go back and listen to the nuggets of wisdom that she's laid down for us in this video. Being able to connect with yourself is vital. If you can't connect with you, then you can't connect with anybody else. And so that's got to be first and foremost. And once you can do that, you can really begin to thrive in the relationships around you. You can thrive in your connections, and you can really begin to thrive in your recovery. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hi, Bradley again. Hi, Sarah. We love you too. But again, I just wanted to share that. I couldn't share it while Christy was on. We couldn't talk about our specific relationship and how she was my drug and alcohol counselor in rehab because of the confidentiality agreements. But she helped save my life. And that big dog that we talked about, that big stuffed animal, that was all Christy's doing. I didn't like her at first for it, but it made all the world of difference. And so, again, if you're catching the tail end of this, watch the whole thing. Christy lays some nuggets of wisdom and some just great things out for anybody, not just recovery people. Anybody looking to connect with themselves and strengthen that connection with themselves so that they can really begin to thrive in all the relationships around them. Also, if you're watching this, be sure and chime in where you're from, city and state. Give me a hashtag live if you're watching it now. Give me a hashtag replay if you're watching it on the replay. And if you've got a question for Christy or you've got a question for myself, please leave it in the comments, and I'll be checking these, and we'll be sure and answer everybody's question the best we can. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Connection Rehab tonight. It was just a powerful hour. And again, I just thank you so much for allowing me the platform to do what this is, and it's just to be the hands and feet of Jesus and to be a difference maker for him. And if you guys need something, please reach out, send me a message. Kip Shubert, Warriors on Purpose. And we look forward to being with you next Sunday for episode 5 of Connection Rehab. Talk to you guys later.